Here with me now is Texas Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw. And Congressman, we want to get to that in a moment, but first I want to ask about what we're going to see in New York this coming week. Your fellow Republicans have come out with really aggressive statements defending Donald Trump, attacking the prosecutor. Given what we don't know about these charges, we don't know the evidence yet. How do you see it?
Well, you don't have to be a lawyer to look at this case and think it's on pretty weak grounds. I mean, look, when you even have the Washington Post editorial board criticizing this prosecutor, looking at this and saying, you need to be careful with how you move forward because this is just very clearly a very weak case. Whatever evidence they might have, you're still talking about very low-level business fraud charges. So I think people need to ask themselves a fundamental question. If this were anyone but Trump, would this DA even take up this case? I mean, this DA has a habit of not taking up cases that are pretty serious, like violent crime and prostitution rings, things like that. But he chooses to take up this one. So it feels obvious to a lot of us that it's politically motivated, it's personally motivated, and I think that's why you're seeing those kind of statements.
And just to be clear, we don't know what the charges are, and I'm not sure that's accurate to say that he's not bringing up charges against people for violent crime. But let me just ask you this. Are there any circumstances in which you think it would be appropriate to criminally prosecute a former U.S. president? Or do you just believe philosophically, fundamentally, that former presidents should be immune from criminal charges?
No, they should definitely not be immune from criminal charges. It's just, again, this one is as weak as it can get, it seems. And plus, you're looking at a supposed crime that's years and years and years old. It's very clearly personally motivated. But no, of course, they shouldn't be immune.
But before we move on, I just also want to ask you about the preparation for potential protests, fine, but even that devolving into violence. How concerned are you about that? And what is your message to people out there on that issue?
Well, look, you're never going to make your point really well if you devolve into violence. That's a really quick way for everyone to stop agreeing with you if they agreed with you previously. So my message is, look, if you want to support the former president and make your voice heard, by all means, but you better do it peacefully.
I want to ask you about guns. You're a member of the new House Republican majority. Are you collectively, House Republicans, telling the American people that mass shootings, including of young children, is that just something that's going to happen and you're not going to make any moves at this point to try to stop it when it comes to the House of Representatives?
Yeah, well, not at all. Look, and I think we do need to have a real conversation about what's happening here. And what I have long called this is a sort of social contagion that's occurred ever since Columbine. This never happened before Columbine. But then Columbine happened, and it was very famous, and it sort of opened the door for very, very disturbed people, whoever they might be, to go in and commit these kind of dramatic, randomized shootings as their outlet for their own evil and crazy. That's basically what's happening.
So you've just...
Now, because it's so random and unexpected, it's hard to prevent. Because they seem like they happen a lot, but they're still anomalous events, and they're very difficult to build a pattern behind. It's not like criminal activity, which you can target and prevent through law enforcement. This is harder. It doesn't mean there's nothing we can do. The truth of the matter is, if we had a minimum of 2 armed guards or police officers at every single school in America, you'd probably prevent these from here on out.
Well, you said
that's the truth.
You said that they're random. The one through line in these deaths is that they are shootings, therefore they are done by guns. And guns are the leading cause of death for children and teens in the U.S. So shouldn't helping save the lives of children be a top priority for you as a member of the House majority?
No, it absolutely should be, which is why I say I would look to the thing that would absolutely stop this, which is putting armed police officers at every school. I visit a lot of schools. I do talks at various schools. It's very rare that I go into a school, especially the newer ones, and they don't have some kind of armed police presence there at all times. So that's a preventive measure. That I know will stop this. And there was nothing like that in these last few mass shootings. There's no armed guards there.
So the answer
if I'm
is
just looking
more
for actual
guns.
solutions, that would be it.
So the answer is more guns.
No, the answer is armed guards. No, the answer is armed guards, right? Armed guards, yes, more guns. The kind of guns that protect the president, that protect you all at CNN. Is it easy to get into your headquarters at CNN? Absolutely not. There's armed guards there. Yeah. There's single points of entry. I think we should look at our schools as a place that is precious and have the same kind of security that your corporate offices do, that we do in Congress. You know, if we consider a place to be important where our children go to learn every day, it should have the same level of security as every other place, whether it's a shopping mall or a corporate office that's hard to get into. You know, you're not going to get rid of guns. And I'm not going to say that people can that law-abiding citizens cannot defend themselves anymore and exercise their Second Amendment rights and think that's going to stop mass violence. People will figure out other ways to commit mass violence once they've unfortunately reached that point in their life. It's tragic and it's sad, and a lot of people, we don't understand what's happening, what's inside their heads. And so we look to these other solutions that I think aren't viable.
There were supposed to be armed guards at the schools in both Uvalde, in your home state of Texas, and Parkland, and that didn't help anything. Let's just move on, because I know energy is a big issue.
But they weren't there, which is the point.
Well, okay, but they're humans, and that also happens. Let's talk about what is going on in the House with regard to energy. The House passed a sweeping energy bill this week. It would expand oil drilling on public lands and essentially undo major parts of President Biden's climate change legislation. The bill is dead on arrival in the Senate since Democrats control that chamber. You wrote an op-ed in 2020 entitled, "It's Time for Conservatives to Own the Climate Change Issue." How does this bill align with that notion?
Sure. Well, if you want to look at, I'll give you an easy example. So how has the United States decreased its carbon emissions more than the next 10 countries combined? Right? We've decreased our carbon emissions massively over the last 20 years. That's almost entirely because of natural gas and the fracking revolution. Because what's that done is it's displaced coal production. Natural gas emits about half the carbon emissions of coal. And by the way, this undoes very little of Biden's climate policies. It stops the attacks on oil and gas. It makes permitting easier. It doesn't reduce a single environmental regulation. It doesn't take away a single environmental standard. It does things like say, look, if we're going to make a decision on this pipeline, it has to be done in this amount of time. If we're going to make a decision on this mining operation, which, by the way, you need critical minerals if you want to build a bunch of solar panels and wind turbines. If you want to build more transmission lines to get the power from the solar farms to the cities, you need to build transmission lines. You need to mine for copper and steel. All right, Democrats have been shutting these projects down. This makes it easier to actually do these things. Because if we don't do them, then we have to buy them from China. And by the way, their environmental standards are very, very low. Let me tell you the best way to reduce carbon emissions right now. Export more natural gas around the world, displace foreign coal production, which accounts for about 50% of total global emissions when it comes to power production, and replace that with natural gas. If you want to have a major, major, major effect on carbon emissions in the near term, in the right here and now, by the way, also while making sure that we have energy security, affordable, reliable energy that actually works when we need it, that's what you would do. And that's what this bill does. Makes it easier to build export terminals, pipelines to get from production to those export terminals and send that out to the world. It's a cleaner form of energy. It actually works. And it's certainly what developing nations are going to want.
Dan Crenshaw, Congressman from Texas, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.